Our next assignment is going to be a very general term as far as what we call factoring. Factoring is, just like we discussed last time, undistributing, where we distributed, we multiplied our coefficients and add our exponents. Factoring is the exact opposite, where we FOILed, this time we're going to be unfoiling. Almost every directive is going to tell us factor completely, and this can be a very general term. There are a handful of techniques that we're going to learn to factor, and we're going to have to learn to recognize also which technique to use, when to apply it, and sometimes we'll even be applying multiple techniques. The first one I want to cover is what's called the greatest common factor, or GCF, as we're going to call it. This is going to be straight up what looks like the distributive property backwards. When we look at the greatest common factor, or our GCF, the GCF should always be the first thing that we want to look for. It will make a lot of other problems a lot easier. And you will notice these problems start where many of our last problems ended. Where we would have distributed, in this case you look for what's in common, just like we said, that we can factor or pull out. 2 and 8 both have a 2 in common. Pull it out. Where when we were distributing, we were multiplying and multiplying our coefficients and adding our exponents. Right now we're going to be dividing our coefficients. We're going to divide that 2 out. We're going to divide that 2 out. And the way that we're able to check ourselves is to distribute. Look at 2 times x was my 2x. 2 times 4 was my 8. But what we're doing in undistributing, we're pulling that 2 back out. And you'll always be able to check yourself by distributing these. When we look at 25x squared plus 10x minus 5. We look at what's in common in all three of these terms. We see that there's a 5 in common. Factor out that 5. 5 pulled out of, divided into that 25x squared is 5x squared. Divide the 10x by the 5, we get a plus 2x. Divide the negative 5, and where again when we look at, maybe those 5 should cancel. I hear a lot of students say, well, that should be the end. Remember that when we divide it, we're still left with a negative 1, and without that constant, notice we wouldn't have the last term. If we check ourselves, 5 times 5x squared is 25x squared. 5 times 2x is 10x. 5 times negative 1 is that negative 5. Without that negative 1, we would not have that negative 5. Make sure you do not forget about your constants. Even when that constant ends up being the GCF, you end up with a 1.